Hello, I'm Malcolm Haslett.
I'm Janice Baker. Have you ever had a domestic dispute and are unsure of how to handle it?
And as we draw to the end of the year, we realise there's a very special time coming up, and it's not Christmas.
What is it?
Well, find out now on Our Time. Great to be here again.
Yes, welcome to Our Time.
And the same for me. Janice, when you were away on holidays, laying around the beaches of the Mediterranean, having wedding anniversaries, where did you have it?
The Amalfi Coast.
Oh,
which was
poor
very
thing.
special.
We felt so sorry for her. I had the pleasure of talking to Alison Shaw, who is a dispute resolution company. Last time we talked about a whole lot of things with Alison. First of all, welcome to the program again.
Thank you, Malcolm.
Lovely to have you back.
Hi, Janice.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
You too.
But we briefly talked about family problems. When a family breaks up, there are the issues of parting of the ways of obviously the two parents, children, family home. I suppose that goes to cars, caravans, boats, flippers, and any other thing.
But then I always thought that you would just go to a family law court or lawyer. I hadn't actually realised that there was this sort of in-between stage that you can go to.
Yes, there is. There are family dispute resolution practitioners now. And the law was changed so that it actually encouraged parents particularly to try and resolve the parenting issues and how the children will spend time with each parent and sort that out themselves without having to go to court.
Yeah, well, wouldn't you rather do that?
Well, and also it becomes terribly expensive once you start moving down that process. And we talked about that process last time, but because you weren't here, could you just explain that again, please?
Well, the litigation process is pretty much like a conveyor belt, where you have to hop on the conveyor belt by issuing proceedings in a court, and the conveyor belt heads in one direction towards a judge at the other end of the conveyor belt. But for people, mums and dads that hop on that conveyor belt, they don't have any control of the speed of the conveyor belt or the direction that the conveyor belt takes. And if one person doesn't comply with a court event, then the conveyor belt stops and nothing happens until everyone's complied again, and then the conveyor belt starts slowly again, heading towards the judge.
So again, there are a lot more people involved along the way as well.
There are, because both parties usually have a lawyer that represents them and gives them legal advice, and then sometimes they also have a barrister who actually is the person that stands up in court to present to the judge what arguments they want along the way for their children and for their property settlement.
So for every mum and dad that doesn't realise that you are there to help them, would they go then immediately to a lawyer, a family law?
Sometimes they go to Relationships Australia or a family relationship centre. But a lot of people just automatically think that they have to go to a lawyer.
Yeah.
And some lawyers will actually recommend a parenting plan, because that's what parents can do.
And is that hopefully trying to try and keep the family together before they go through the divorce
It's not
process?
therapy and it's not counselling.
Right.
It is a dispute resolution process that's very future focused on how it's going to look and feel for the children and for the parents and their involvement in the children's lives going forward.
Okay.
Now, when we watch these sort of programs on TV, everyone, I think, thinks it's all going to happen like it does in TV, like within an hour. So I suppose for most people it's a little bit confusing.
Oh, yes. They think that they know what court is. And because I've been a family lawyer for over 20 years as well, I have seen how people get quite surprised that their day in court is not exactly what they thought it was going to be.
Right.
And that they really don't get the chance to talk to a judge and tell the judge how it was and how it is, and that it's all done for them, and they're really not in control of the process at all. and that decisions get made for them and they feel very underprepared or unprepared and out of control.
Well, speaking from a male perspective, because the stories are often about men with their families, that they lose the intimacy with their children, the fun with their children, they get them for a few hours or a day a week or a weekend once a fortnight or whatever. Is the law geared towards the mother in the family more than the father in the family? Why do so many men complain that they've lost? I mean, some men are not perfect and some women are not perfect.
Well, no, that's true.
But it does seem to favour a mother. Is that true?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question because every family is different and the law tries to recognise that. The law itself is in legislation and that is really quite fair between a mother and a father and sees them as parents with equal responsibility for the care of the children. However, when it comes to the application of the law to a family, then it's my experience also that there are still the stereotypes of the mother's relationship with children as opposed to the father's relationship with children that pervades the how the law is applied. And so there are over 400,000 men in Australia that are separated and their children live only with the mother.
Sad though, isn't it?
It is sad, but as you say, I mean, every family is different and every situation is different. So it's hard to say why the husbands don't have as much chance with the children.
But you wonder whether, as we're talking about resolving a lot of this before it ever becomes an issue in court, before a judge has to make a final decision or an arbitrator has to make a final decision. So really the benefit for almost anybody who's got an issue, whether it be with, primarily we're talking about separations of families, but there's obviously other things involved. It's the house, it's the car, it's the bank account, and, you know, you just keep going.
The family business, the family farm, all assets have
So
to be divided
you have to
up.
deal with that too.
Yes.
As well as children,
Yes.
you have to deal with all of that.
So the reality here is, if you were to go to somebody to help you resolve, how does it work? So Janice and I we're not married, but we're a married couple. We've decided that's it. 3 sons. How do we separate and a business together? How do we separate all of these things? If we both go to independent lawyers, it means the lawyers have got to talk. If we come to somebody like you, do we both see you and you take notes and then compare those notes with that notes and try and give advice to each of us? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's a voluntary process for property settlement, but before going to court, regarding your children and the 3 children that you have in this hypothetical situation, you actually do have to see a family dispute resolution practitioner first in an attempt to come up with a parenting plan between you about how the children are going to spend their time with each of you.
Now, that's a legal necessity
And
before
yes,
you go any further.
Yes.
I think that's important to understand, isn't it?
It is. And choosing a family dispute resolution practitioner does require some trust that the practitioner is going to be professional and independent and not take sides, because they don't represent either of you. They're just merely providing a process for you to have some constructive conversations about
Dealing
your
with
children.
everything.
Yeah. And dealing with the children separately from the property settlement.
And hopefully you're amicable. Hopefully
I
it's not...
still like you.
I'm not so sure about you.
And preserving the relationship through engagement of the mother and the father together is more likely than through the court process. Unfortunately, the litigation process really does put the nail in the coffin and damage that relationship in ways that sometimes can never be mended.
What about in gay family relationships? Because clearly this is something that's going to be an issue as time goes on with the separation of people. It's
Yes,
going to be across
definitely.
everybody.
Yes, it affects everybody in the same way. The law is applied in the same way for all parenting matters.
Important thing to remember. So there are people like you in every state in Australia?
Yes, because the family law is actually national. So it is the same in every state, and they must see a family dispute resolution practitioner in their state first for parenting matters, but they can do that for property settlement as well to try and quickly make some decisions and resolve things themselves without the courts and to have control over the outcomes.
So your advice to anyone who has a dispute in a family, because that's all we're really talking about this time, go perhaps and look for somebody like you.
A private mediator.
Yes.
That is also a family dispute resolution practitioner.
And your company is called?
Shaw Mediation Australia.
So that makes it really easy.
It does.
If you do have an issue, it's really important to obviously work it out. It just can't go on festering forever. And as we were saying before, it's so easy to think you have to go to a lawyer first, but in actual fact, you don't. Thank you very much,
Thank
Alison.
you.
It's been
Thank
lovely to
you.
see you again.
Very nice to meet you. Thanks for coming.
Come back again and tell us about some other things we should have you for.
Anytime. Thank you.
And we're going to be back with a really interesting story.
That was really interesting.
Oh, it was. Sorry. An equally interesting story. We're going to meet Jo O'Callaghan from the Adelaide Fringe. She's the head of artists and venues. We're going to find out about the Fringe coming up in February next year.
And we're back.
I'm excited.
Well, tell me
Doesn't
why.
take much to excite me because the Fringe is coming soon.
Yes.
And the Fringe here in South Australia, for those of you who don't live in South Australia, is the second largest Fringe in the world. And it's growing every year.
It is.
And
so, to tell us all about it,
Yes.
we have Jo O'Callaghan from the Adelaide Fringe, head of artists, venues and events. Is that right?
That's correct. Thank you for
Welcome.
having me.
Welcome. Jo, this is your first year.
It is my first year. I joined the team at Adelaide Fringe a little over 4 months
Do
ago.
you like me to get the water out so I can baptise you?
Yeah, that would be great. No
Yes,
one's done
okay.
that yet, actually.
No.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be coming soon.
Just chuck a bucket over.
Yeah, perfect.
So it's going to be an interesting year for you, and probably fresh blood is always good because it makes everybody sort of sit up and pay attention again.
Well, yeah, I mean, Heather's in her third year, so this will be her third festival as our festival director. And
Well, we've
so,
had Heather on previously
Yeah.
talking on the program.
and so I think there is a little bit of changing of the guards in terms of the staff, but under her leadership, it's a very steady boat. So, yeah.
Jo, you were just saying, though, you're back from Melbourne. So you're
Yeah.
originally from Adelaide. What took you to Melbourne and why are you back? Well, job is probably why you're back in
Yeah,
Adelaide. but-
yeah. So I moved over, I was actually a performer over there for a long time, and then I started working for the Comedy Festival. So I worked at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival for the last 5 years. And then, I was able to get this job, so I moved back and, living the dream in Adelaide.
With your parents.
Yep,
Where
taking
did-
up short residency, very
Yeah,
short
love it.
residency.
Love it,
yep.
love it, love it.
But they're pretty happy to have me back.
I
so
bet
it's
they
great.
are. I bet
Yeah.
they are.
So what's new, what's happening, what's different this year with the Fringe?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of new exciting things, and the program is really growing every year. So we're looking at having a few more events this year than we have in the past. One of the key things that Adelaide Fringe has changed is the parade. So we're now doing a parade of light. So that will happen every night of the Fringe Festival
Oh,
along
really?
North Terrace.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Not just the first night. So
Not just the first night. So
Oh,
there
fantastic.
won't be the Fringe parade as we've seen it in the past,
Right.
but there'll be a parade of light which will happen, and there'll be projections, and all of the buildings along North Terrace will be illuminated.
I love that.
you?
I do. I love that.
I'd love to be illuminated.
Yes, no,
do.
but it looks awesome. I have
Yeah.
seen
It
it
does,
before, and
yes,
it,
it really
does
does.
look fantastic.
It actually
Yeah.
changes the whole look of a city, doesn't it?
It really
Absolutely
does.
changes it.
And I think we were really looking to try and bring life to the city for every night of the Fringe, not just the one opening night. So
Yeah.
I think there'll be a big street party and everything for the first night of the Parade of Light, but otherwise it'll be there every night. So
But as corny as it sounds, that's one of the great successes of Disneyland. The fact is that light parade at night and everything lights up and everybody's, whoa!
Yeah.
I'm in Fantasyland, so
Yeah.
to speak. it just changes everything.
Yeah, and it means that you march your own parade. So you have at your own time on your own journey the ability to go and see each of the different visual installations. Some of them are animated, some of them are light displays, and so you can take your time to watch them and enjoy them at your own pace rather than kind of standing and waiting for floats to go by. You're in control of that experience, which is really exciting.
But the Fringe isn't just in Adelaide City, is it?
Not at all. Actually, we go all over the place. So we have a Fringe on Tour program, which goes up to Port Augusta and Mount Gambier and Whyalla. And there's also a lot of regional centres and suburban centres that have great community projects behind them as well.
I actually didn't know that it spread that far.
Oh, didn't you?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. The interesting thing is not everybody knows the background of why we have a Fringe. Do you know why we have a Fringe?
Look, I mean, I could be wrong, but my understanding
I'll correct you because I know the answer.
Oh, good, good. My understanding was that it sort of came out of a group of artists that wanted to perform as part of the Edinburgh Fringe, as part of the Edinburgh Festival, but they couldn't, so they started the Edinburgh Fringe.
Oh, there?
Yeah, in Edinburgh.
Well, that's really what happened here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, similar thing
with the Adelaide
here.
Festival of Arts.
Yeah.
There were a lot of people coming into the city, but it wasn't so much using local performers or performances or spaces.
Yeah.
It was all primarily the festival centre here. And and it's grown over these years so
exponentially.
much.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's really overshadowed the other festival. And every other thing that's on at the same time in Mad March, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, there's so much. I mean, Adelaide is so lucky to have so many different things, and whether it's, Adelaide Festival or WOMAD or, Adelaide 500 or the Cup Day, all of those things that all contribute to making a really vibrant city at that time is really important. And I think we're just lucky that Adelaide Fringe has such a big sprawl and happens for so long that everyone, there's no excuses to not be a part of it.
And it did start for the local performers initially, wasn't it?
Yeah.
More for the local artists that wanted to be seen.
Yes,
and then it's sort of,
Because in a way it's a bit of a touring circuit, isn't it? Because does it start in Edinburgh or start in Canada or where does it start?
I mean, look, you could tour the world. There's hundreds of Fringe festivals, so you could make your own circuit. But I think in Australia, specifically at that time, a lot of people go to Perth first. So that happens in sort of January to mid-February. And then they come across to Adelaide, and then they can go on and either go to New Zealand or Melbourne Comedy Festival if they're a comedy show. And so there's lots of ways that you can kind of do a number of shows here. And then in September, there's another circuit which happens with, Sydney Fringe and Melbourne Fringe. So there's a lot of acts that kind of do those festivals at the same time.
We have our own little Fringe at my theatre.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Cabaret Under the Star, which has just happened in the last month or so. So, yes, it's a matter of getting artists and audiences connected, isn't it? At the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Because to see something that you've never seen before that comes from another country, or to see something local that you may be able to see again later if it does well.
Yeah.
We were talking to Heather about the fact that not every show does brilliantly well. Some do such gung-ho business they have to extend.
Yeah.
Some struggle a bit to keep going, but it's being part of the Fringe gives you the opportunity to, in a way, resell yourself to the rest of the world because I've been part of the Adelaide Fringe. Oh, really? Oh, well, you must know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's a great experience for artists.
It definitely is, and I think there's a number of programs within the Adelaide Fringe that enable artists to take that opportunity, one of them being the Honeypot program.
Yes.
So we specifically bring in industry from all over the world and Australia to see shows and take them back to their theatres that they run if they're venue operators.
So it's like a pitch session. Come and see the show in operation with a live audience. And then
if you like it, then you can take it somewhere else.
No, I think that's a brilliant incentive, particularly for local entrepreneurs too, because it gives all of us a chance to see who is around and who may come into our theatres in the future.
Yeah.
Do you get some weird questions from people, from artists about...
Oh, all kinds of weird
questions. Because there are things that people don't necessarily think about, like visas.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have to handle all of that, don't you?
Yeah, so we have a specific artist services person that works with us for about 6 months of the year, specifically working on visas, so that if you are an international artist and you're trying to come to this country, they can provide advice and support to help you get the required visa for your stay here. So,
and then linking them up with local venues that they can...
Yeah, so there's literally 4 people still in the office tonight that are doing the final stages of connecting artists and venues together. So, we have last year, well, the 2017 program had 450 something venues connected with, you know, over 5,000 artists. So it's a really big job to try and connect artists with the venues and make sure that they can be successful.
Do you sleep well?
You're not going to apply for a job? You're not going to apply for a job?
No, I'm not. I'm just thinking, gosh, you know, and I mean, that you must lay down of an evening or when you actually do get to bed and just so much going on in your head.
Yeah, there is a lot. And I guess that comes with the nature of the fact, you know, the festival has 1,200 events in it and counting. So we haven't got the final number for 2018, but it's a big beast. And like you said, it's the second in the world to Edinburgh Fringe. So we're lucky to have it here. And I think it's so well supported by Adelaide and, you know, the general kind of community that this city holds. And it's really great.
Well, there are some other things that are really relevant, I suppose, to talk about as well. In the past, when somebody buys a ticket, obviously some of that money needs to go back to pay the people who structure all the tickets. What's happened this year?
Yeah, so we were able to secure funding for $1 million, which means that the inside charge that artists would previously have paid to Fringe Tix, which is our ticketing service to provide the ticketing and the infrastructure of the box offices and all that kind of stuff, they've actually eliminated that. So there's no inside charges anymore. So and we're the first in sort of Australia and, to my knowledge, the world that's been able to secure funding to do specifically that.
So it makes it easier for the artists to actually make just that little bit more to make it worthwhile coming.
Definitely. So it's all about
putting together a show.
Yeah, putting more money back in artists' pockets and making sure that they can thrive. And part of being able to thrive and present shows is to make sure that it's not costing you money and hopefully that you're making money from it. So it's a big step forward.
Well, if they're not making money from it, then it absolutely does seem pointless even trying, doesn't it?
Well,
so you need to get, even if it's only a little bit.
That's true, but sometimes, you know, if no one knows you exist and no one's seen your show, this is an opportunity. Even if one person comes to see the show and writes a comment down, you can use that and say, I've been part of the Fringe.
Yeah, and there's definitely, like, we do an artist survey at the end of the festival every year that asks why. Like, why did you guys find success in this festival? And generally making money is maybe the third or the fourth reason. You know, the first reason is often fun and enjoyment. The second reason is connection to other artists. So a lot of artists use Adelaide Fringe as a point to connect and to grow and to skill share and to learn, and it's kind of a foundation for their knowledge base. And then a lot of artists use it also for the industry perspective, the Honeypot program, which we talked about, and then you get on to, you know, your money making and all of that kind of stuff. But there is a really broad reason behind why a lot of different artists perform in the Fringe, and you know, for each individual person of the thousands that are artists, it's very different. So yeah.
And have a holiday in Adelaide if you're from somewhere else.
That's it.
Yeah.
Well, get out and meet people from the rest of the world. Stay with us for a moment. We'll be back with a little bit more information in just a moment.
We're back with Alison Shaw and Joe Callaghan. Thank you, ladies.
Yes, Alison, thank you for being on the program. We were just saying in the break there, the question I asked about men often having a problem with not being able to see their kids, you made a really valid point.
The point really is that after a separation, the parents are often grieving the loss of the relationship at different stages, and both parents are at different phases of that grief process. So often they'll feel that things are unfair or not going their way just because of where they're at in dealing with the situation, and women tend to move on faster and grieve the loss of the relationship earlier than men generally do.
Because in the average, I suppose, situation, men are away at work a lot during the daytime. Not that women aren't also, but there does seem to be a primary carer in most families, and often that's the woman, isn't it?
It's more the primary organiser now, rather than the primary carer from my perspective.
Yeah, I get it. And the 8th of December, a very important date.
It is, yeah. That's the date that our program goes live. So all 1,200 and something shows that will be part of Adelaide Fringe 2018 will be on our website, adelaidefringe.com.au. So I encourage you and yourself and everyone to get involved and head out and see some shows and pick one you've never seen or heard of before and something that you know you'll love.
But you'll always hear from somebody else, oh, I've seen this one, you have to go.
That's
It's true, but there is absolutely nothing like the memory of a live show.
That's it.
No.
It's so different to watching a movie, seeing real people doing real things. I reckon I can remember every single live show I've ever seen.
And you know what?
It's just something that clicks and stays with
Yeah, well, there's 650-something thousand people that went to see a live show in Adelaide Fringe 2017 that I know will be back next year.
you. But of course, if you're watching this program, you can't go without seeing this one first. And things have changed a bit with the platforms of watching free-to-air television. So we'll tell you about that.
In addition to broadcasting on air, Channel 44 Adelaide also stream their broadcast online via their website www.c44.com.au.
Just visit the website on your desktop, laptop, tablet or mobile phone and click on the Watch Live Streams link at the top of the page. Past episodes of programs including Our Time, are available to watch by clicking on the Watch TV On Demand link or by using the search bar at the top of the page. Channel 44 are busy working on a new custom-made app for your mobile and tablet devices, and in the meantime the best way to watch Channel 44 online is through their website. And if you're watching the program in Perth, it's the same thing for C31 in Melbourne, the same for C31. And you can watch in Brisbane the program online at any time.
That's right.
So until next time we meet.
Thank you for joining us. Take care.
And keep yourself nice till then. Bye.